over the phone.
It helped not having a preset limit.
It's great getting points every time you use the card.
I can call 24 hours a day. That helps.
No matter what you do or where you go, the American Express card can help you do more.
Early Edition with Carol Lynn and Leon Harris. Weekdays on CNN.
It's Tuesday, November 2nd, 1999. Tonight on NewsStand. EgyptAir 990. Did it plunge into the sea because of mechanical problems?
The only outstanding maintenance issue they reported was that one engine thrust reverser was inoperative.
Meantime, the recovery mission prepares to go deep as the USS Grapple arrives in Newport and the families converge on the scene to cope with their loss.
What makes an airplane drop out of the sky at 33,000 feet when it perfectly flew fine from LA to New York?
Tragedy unfolds in Hawaii. A gunman opens fire in an office building.
This is a tragedy for us. We live in the safest city in the United States.
What triggered this latest act of random violence? Bring on the public. One man's unorthodox strategies to attract a crowd at his museum. But this has got critics, well, critical.
The trouble with the Guggenheim is this emphasis on achieving and maintaining a high profile over the kinds of things that museums are really supposed to be focusing on.
Is this the dumbing down of art, or an innovative way to revive the museum business? CNN NewsStand with anchors Stephen Frazier and Natalie Allen in Atlanta.
Good evening. Welcome to NewsStand.
A potentially stunning development hours before EgyptAir Flight 990 crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. Concerns were raised about a possible mechanical problem.
Tonight, the focus is again on the thrust reversers, devices designed to brake a plane dramatically once it's on the ground and not intended for use in the air. The reversers, among many variables investigators are looking at, mindful that they did deploy in midair during the crash of another Boeing 767 in Thailand in 1991. Now to CNN's Carl Rochelle at the staging area for search operations in Newport, Rhode Island. Carl, what's the latest?
Well, Stephen, information learned by CNN and from the National Transportation Safety Board points more in the direction of a mechanical problem with the plane's thrust reversers. The National Transportation Safety Board says the EgyptAir 767 jetliner had a problem with one of its thrust reversers. Government sources told CNN that a crew member reported a problem with one of the thrusters when they landed in Los Angeles before the return flight to New York.
The only outstanding maintenance issue they reported was that one engine thrust reverser was inoperative. Flight with the reverser inoperative is approved by the minimum equipment list for the airplane.
Thrust reversers deploy around the aft engine of a jetliner's engine. It reverses the thrust and pushes the clamshell-like doors, push the air forward and help brake the aircraft. On the ground, it's a valuable tool. In the air, it can be a killer. In May of 1991, a Lauda Airlines 767 crashed in the jungles of Thailand, killing all aboard after one thrust reverser deployed in the air. The FAA issued a directive after that to correct the problem. But two additional directives have been issued, one or proposed, one in September, another about 2 weeks ago, to fix potential problems with thrust reversers on 767s. The directives were issued because of reports of damage and wear in some parts and concern that their failure could result in deployment of the reversers and subsequent loss of control. The proposed directives won't go into effect for several months. The Safety Board also reported new data about the plane's descent. 9 hits from the radar on Nantucket showed the plane descending from 33,000 feet, now down to 16,700 feet, much lower than the 19,100 feet earlier reported. And Chairman Jim Hall of the National Transportation Safety Board says it took 40 seconds for the plane to reach that point. Now, searchers have heard pings from both of the aircraft's black boxes, the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder. However, it's going to be several days before they can recover them. The weather has deteriorated off of the area where they are searching, with winds up to 50 miles an hour, we are told, and seas running as high as 25 to 30 feet in the area. They have brought all of the ships back ashore except one that is standing out in the area, standing watch to make sure everything is okay. And if the weather really gets bad enough, they could bring that one in too. Forecasters say it could be that bad through the weekend, which is going to put a hold on this operation. But the officials say that when it is all over, when the weather improves, they do believe they can go back out, recover the black boxes and additional debris from the crash. Stephen?
Carl, weather notwithstanding, that is a lot of new information. Thank you very much. Carl Rochelle reporting from Newport, Rhode Island.
So just what are thrust reversers? When are they supposed to be used? And what can happen if they deploy early? We get some answers from CNN's Mike Betcher.
Anyone who has flown in a commercial jet has probably felt the benefit of a thrust reverser. The loud noise and sudden jolt as an airliner slows down after landing is the work of those reversers, located in the aft of jet engines. Thrust reversers work this way. In normal flight, an aircraft is propelled by jet thrust directed through the rear of the engine. To slow the plane after landing, clam-shaped plates deploy in the back of the jet, blocking thrust and forcing the jet blast to reverse directions, slowing the airliner. But a 1991 crash in Thailand demonstrated the devastating effect of thrust reversers deploying accidentally in flight. 223 people aboard the Lauda Airlines 767 perished when one of the thrust reversers deployed in flight, causing the aircraft to fall uncontrollably to Earth. With one side of the aircraft propelled by forward thrust and the other by reverse thrust, the jet is forced into what is called a violent yaw. In such a scenario, the aircraft basically flips over and is almost unflyable. In the case of the Lauda Air crash, the last sounds on the cockpit recorder, the pilot saying, "Reversers deployed." Moments later, the sound of the jet breaking apart. In 1994, 3 years after the crash, the Federal Aviation Administration ordered several modifications in U.S.-registered 767s to prevent in-flight deployments of thrust reversers.
Just ahead on NewsStand, the victims' families will hear what they're being told and see how they are coping. And later, the day's other big story, what's become of the alleged gunman in Honolulu's deadly office rampage.
NewsStand is brought to you by Fidelity Investments. We help you invest responsibly. Visit us at fidelity.com.
As you might expect, Teller and I don't see eye to eye on investing. I like to avoid risk. Teller's a little more daring. We do, however, share the same new way to trade online.
Introducing PowerStreet by Fidelity, the first site with trading tools customized by Lycos to fit your life, your goals, your unique way of doing things.
Look, the market's up. Or, in your case, down.
PowerStreet Online Trading. Call or visit fidelity.com to open an account.
I'm a career manager from Interim. Oh! Do you have a minute to talk about your resume?
Okay. If you're stuck in the wrong job, talk to someone who can help you find the right one. Hey, it's a big step. You could probably use a little attention.
How do you work under pressure?
I'd say pretty good. There's only one job you really want, the right job. So call 1-800-A-CAREER or visit acareer.com. We'll help you find what you're looking for.
It's a dog-eat-dog world, with every dog looking for his day. So it's all work your butt off and watch your tail. Now you know how to do that, don't you? Learn new tricks. Rico is in your corner with the digital solutions that make your workplace work.
Dozens of relatives and friends of those who died aboard Flight 990 are now in Rhode Island, many of them traveling from the other side of the world to be near the investigation. Today, they received another blow, as authorities said it is unlikely the bodies of their loved ones will be recovered intact. CNN's Gary Tuckman focuses on the families now in his reporter's notebook.
As a journalist, it's very hard to cover a story like this. You're very aware of the agony these people are going through. We've covered these stories many times before. I personally covered TWA Flight 800, the crash in 1996, Swiss Air Flight 111 in 1998. We knew the horrors these people went through, and we knew what to expect this time. And when I saw these people's faces as they got off the airplane at the airport here in Rhode Island, and as they got off the bus here at the hotel and saw the pain in their face, it's hard to even start reporting about it because you're so touched by what these people are going through.
We're just waiting to hear some news, and we hopefully just find his body, so I can take him to the family back home.
After the crash of TWA Flight 800, TWA and other authorities got a lot of criticism from the family members of the passengers aboard that plane for not providing information in a timely fashion, for not being sympathetic sometimes. It was very frustrating for a lot of family members. You're not going to erase the frustration, but there were a lot of people who felt there was way too much frustration and red tape after that accident. After that, an act was passed which required the National Transportation Safety Board to take care of the family members of the victims.
Everyone is working as quickly and as efficiently as possible in a compassionate manner to recover both the aircraft and those aboard.
What we've seen in all the air disasters we cover are people who at first are just totally stunned. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what to expect. This is the ultimate nightmare. When you talk about a nightmare that you can't wake up from, this is what it is. And the first day or two afterwards, they don't even know what questions to ask. Then what we see after a couple of days is the anger starting to set in. They get frustrated with authorities, and in many cases rightfully so. They get angry that this could have possibly happened to them, and they start losing a lot of hope. And that's why the grief counselors are so important, because they're very familiar with that too, and they try to help them through it. One thing we must remember about any air crash, the most important thing is the people, not the plane itself. Obviously, planes are important, how they're built are important because people fly them, but what we don't want to forget is that the people are the story. And when we have family members of the victims coming up to us and saying, please, let me tell you about my loved ones, we're only too happy to listen to them because we don't want to forget that the people are the most important priority for us as journalists.
At least one baby died in the crash. So too a couple in their 70s celebrating their first wedding anniversary. Also among the victims, 5 Egyptian teenagers. Their loss has shattered a Baltimore, Maryland high school. CNN's Jonathan Carl with their story.
At this time, we will have a moment of reflection and silence to think about our loss.
For those at Dunbar High School in Baltimore, news about EgyptAir Flight 990 hit especially hard.
When I saw the special bulletin on TV, I just screamed. And I just went into an awesome prayer with God and asking God not to let it be.
5 of the passengers on Flight 990 were returning home to Egypt after living with families in Baltimore for 2 weeks as part of an exchange program, a short stay that forged a strong bond.
When I hugged her at the airport, I said, this won't be the last time I'll see you. I'll see you again.
The Roses hosted one of the Egyptian students, 19-year-old Walet Zayed.
I wanted her parents to know that, Walet touched our lives as well as other lives.
On Friday, they held a going-away party for their new Egyptian friends. Now they plan to go to Rhode Island to tell the families how the students spent the last 2 weeks of their lives. Principal Joyce Jennings, who hosted the group's chaperone and his 12-year-old daughter, will go too.
Our message would be to touch them, to hug them, to caress them, to let them know that their loss is our loss.
The Egyptians were Dunbar High's first exchange students ever. A group of Dunbar students were to complete the exchange this spring with a stay in Luxor, Egypt, a trip few students want to think about now.
All I can say is that I'll see her one day again. When I get to heaven, she's going to be there, and she's going to welcome me with open arms.
Jonathan Carl, CNN, Baltimore.
From the families now back to the investigation, and for more insight into that, we are joined by Mike Dornheim, a former senior engineer at Boeing who now works for Aviation Week. Thank you for coming back, Mr. Dornheim. We spoke last night, and when we left off, let's be fair, when we left off, we were talking about customers of Boeing complaining about quality control programs. I understand that those same customers said that Boeing repaired those issues, solved those issues, repaired those problems very well. Is that correct?
I don't have a good feel for the exact details of how they addressed the thrust reverser problem that came up from the Lauda Air crash. There was a fix that came out. It added a third backup measure to prevent the thrust reverser from coming open in cruise. They're only made to come open on landing, so it seemed to work.
And that repair is actually sort of a track to control the movement of mechanical parts. Is that correct?
It's a lock, essentially. The thrust reverser is, if you look outside the wing on this type of airplane, the part of the cowl will actually slide back on the engine. It moves on a track, and there's a lock to lock it in the closed position. And actually, I think the fix made there be 2 mechanical locks to put it in that position. From what I understand, in this case, it sounds like the pilot said that a thrust reverser may have been inoperative upon landing at Los Angeles. One thing that's done sometimes, I have no idea whether it's done in this flight, is that you can deactivate a thrust reverser where you turn off the hydraulics to the thrust reverser so it can't be activated to move. And then quite often there's a little pin that you put in as well to prevent it mechanically from moving. Ideally, that should be a good thing that would even further lock it from moving. I think, though, there have been very rare accidents where that deactivation was not done correctly and the thrust reverser was able to slide. But I have no idea what's going on in this case.
Right, we don't. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, although this kind of detail is valuable insight. Is it possible, let me ask you a passenger's question now, if the plane were in a very steep and rapid descent, could you employ those thrust reversers to slow the plane down? Would that be a wise maneuver?
There are some airplanes, not Boeing airplanes, but some of the Douglas airplanes, and I think the military C-5 large transport, you can activate the thrust reversers in flight for an emergency descent, and they're made to be rugged enough for that. Boeing long ago decided to make the thrust reversers essentially for ground use only. There is a serious concern that if one of them gets stuck in the reverse position in flight, you could have a real problem, particularly if it just gets stuck on one side. Also, I believe on the Boeing airplanes, there's an air-ground logic switch that lets you know whether the airplane is on the ground and in the air. And I believe the thrust reversers are just prevented mechanically from operating at all if the airplane thinks it's on the air. You really have to wait until the wheels touch down before you can use the thrust reversers.
Let me know if this is beyond your field of expertise, but we've heard from an aviation attorney representing families of the victims in that Lauda air crash in Thailand, who said that that plane descended so steeply he wasn't sure that the pilots could withstand the G-forces well enough to try to control the plane, that they'd be blacking out because of the gravity. Does that make sense to you?
It's a little bit on the edge. The airplanes are designed to pretty readily take probably 4 or 5 Gs. Certainly commercial transports have taken 4 or 5 Gs without too much structural failure. And that's about the edge where you begin to gray out or have trouble moving around. If you can feel it coming on, you actually tighten your stomach muscles and make sort of a grunting thing to prevent the blood from flowing down. But if you don't, if it comes on quickly, it can be a bit more of a problem. It's the structural capability sort of right on the edge of gray out or blackout.
So the plane is about as strong as the people flying it then, in a sense.
Well, if you have the proper equipment and they're prepared, the pilot probably could pull the wings off the airplane, but if it's more of an emergency situation, it may not be the case.
Those are scary thoughts. Well, Mr. Dornheim, thank you for joining us again tonight. I suspect we're not done having this conversation. Mike Dornheim, engineering writer for Aviation Week. And NewsStand will continue in just a moment.
Also ahead, travel jitters, nervous passengers. For many, air travel is getting tougher to take.
I'm petrified. There's not a point when I'm flying that I'm comfortable.
The fear and concerns about safety that might not be warranted when CNN NewsStand returns.
Would you like some roast beef?
Yeah, and don't be stingy.
Well, I'll have the Swedish meatballs. Oh, by the way, you look simply radiant. You do make a perfect couple.
Thank you.
Hey, it's all foam.
How do you plan on paying for your wedding? Conseco's wide range of financial solutions can help. Conseco, step up.
It's here. It's real. A way to combine voice, video, data, and internet we call Sprint Ion. Integrated on-demand network.
Can we see it from the south side?
Sure.
Great job.
But it's not just about how Sprint Ion will help you bring products and services to market faster. It's about facing your stockholders with a smile. Isn't that the point of contact?
We're 345.6 miles from El Paso, Texas. Austin is north-northeast, turning south-southeast. Dry cleaner 3.4 miles away. Buenos Aires. I'm 45 feet above sea level. 47.
Should have bought you a tie.
You rely on Amazon.com for electronics and all sorts of gifts. They rely on priority mail to get it there fast and to save you money.
At this pace, we would get there in 12 days.
What's your e-priority?
At WebStreet, we believe an online trading website should be a full-service site. So while we offer features such as real-time account updates, the fastest trades online, and free expanded research, we're also there with a helping hand whenever you need it. WebStreet Securities, online financial services.
I hate grapes. Green and purple and seedless. Sure, they taste great. But on a supermarket floor, they can make for nasty slips and falls. Hi, I'm Al Mangoni, a safety specialist with Liberty Mutual Insurance. There's no reason the supermarket floor should ever be a dangerous place. So we're working on non-slip flooring and other materials to keep you safe.
At Liberty Mutual, we have hundreds of experts helping you live a safer, more secure life. It's insurance in action.
I also hate bananas.
They're impossible to ignore, especially if you're heading to the airport. The newspaper headlines about EgyptAir Flight 990 and that nagging fear that bites hard or just whispers when we step into a plane. You can't ignore the news, but maybe you should disregard those fears. Joining us from our Los Angeles bureau is Barry Glassner, a sociology professor at the University of Southern California, and he's written a book called The Culture of Fear: Why Americans Are Afraid of the Wrong Things. Mr. Glassner, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
So if someone concludes after seeing the coverage of this EgyptAir disaster that flying is unsafe and they feel afraid to fly, you would say what to them?
I would tell them that they really need to get a grip on reality about this, that what happened there is very tragic. I don't mean to minimize at all the tragedy of this crash, but flying is phenomenally safe. About twice as many people die in auto accidents every year than have died in airplane crashes in the whole history of aviation.
And you not only talk about flying in your book, but you talk about a lot of society's perceived problems and how people misuse the facts and generate fears that are unfounded. Give us some more examples. Like crime, for example, you point out is down, but everyone thinks crime is up.
Exactly. Crime rates now are at a historic low. That is, they've been going down for more years than in any time in American history. But fear of crime is still very, very high, and that keeps people inside. It creates problems in communities that we really shouldn't have. And so it's really very unfortunate. We're living in really very safe, very good times, but we have all these fears that are just blown way out of proportion.
And why is that? Is it because people are so bombarded by images and news these days?
I think that's right. I think the news media, by and large, do a very good job, but the problem is that we keep seeing these same images over and over again. I think back to that terrifying scene of the children leaving Columbine High School, fleeing. We've seen that image over and over again. You know, after this crash, of course, there's just continuous talk about air safety and just so many scares. You know, was this a bomb that brought the plane down? Some people have seriously talked about whether there's something about the area around Kennedy Airport somehow that has something to do with this. And so we're just constantly on edge from a lot of these scares and the images that we see.
And is the internet making this worse?
Well, the internet makes it much more instantaneous, which is a whole other problem here. And we need to really keep in mind, especially when we look at what's on the internet, that that's completely unfiltered in many cases. They're very reliable sites, like CNN site, for example, but then there are many where it's just pure speculation. And those then spread where people remail, send the email on to each other, spreading all kinds of scares and superstitions that then just escalate and really increase this kind of environment of fear that we're living in.
And it has quite extensive ramifications, doesn't it? You point out how it can devastate businesses.
That's right. If you look, for example, going back to the airline situation, if you look back to 1994, there were big scares about EgyptAir after a crash near Pittsburgh, and lots of talk about it being an unsafe airline when really their safety record was quite good, but the stock lost about half of its value. EgyptAir lost something like $40 million. They had to work very, very hard to regain the market and to get back into place. And that's the kind of situation that happens a lot. And in our personal lives, we waste a lot of money also as a result of a lot of these scares and fears. And also, sometimes, frankly, we put ourselves at greater risk. You know, if for example, you cancel your plane reservations because you're afraid now, and you drive, you're putting yourself at much greater risk than you would if you were flying.
Thanks again for joining us. Your book is The Culture of Fear, Barry Glassner. Thanks for being with us. Now to Stephen.
Natalie, two other airline stories making news tonight. Boeing has discovered the cockpit lining on 4 of its most popular planes does not meet fireproof standards, a drip shield it's called. As a result, deliveries of 747s, 757s, 767s, and 777s are being held up until the shield is brought up to code. Boeing stock fell more than $1 a share on that news. And today, the National Transportation Safety Board issued its findings on the 1997 crash of a Korean jetliner on Guam. Investigators cited pilot error and cockpit confusion as causes of that disaster, which killed 228 people on board a 747. 26 survived. Korean Air Flight 801 slammed into a hillside during a nighttime landing attempt.
In just a moment, the latest on today's office rampage in Hawaii.
These days you hear a lot about e-commerce, and usually it's about companies with names that end in .com. Actually, e-commerce is for any company that wants a better way to do business, like respond faster to the market, or work better with partners and customers. At Microsoft, we've helped thousands of companies build on their existing systems to create the kinds of e-commerce solutions that can make any business run smarter.
In the Money. Make the most of your personal finances and join our online investment club. In the Money, weekdays 11 Eastern on CNN.
What's a Freeman Wellwood? A different kind of discount broker. No churn and burn, or costly roundabout answers. You get free information and great rates by phone, the internet, or at a local office from a real live broker. So, what's a Freeman Wellwood? A whole new spin on discount brokers.
In downtown Portland at 2nd and Alder.
Early Edition with Carol Lynn and Leon Harris. Weekdays on CNN.
Work Workplace violence reared its ugly head today in Honolulu, Hawaii. The suspect, described by one authority as a disgruntled employee who snapped, is in police custody now. We get more from CNN's Ann McDermott.
Another bloody rampage, another workplace shooting, this one in Hawaii, where 7 people were shot dead inside a Xerox office building just outside downtown Honolulu. According to the police, it was the same old awful story. A suspect kills his co-workers. This happened a little after 8 Tuesday morning when police say the suspect, a Xerox copier repairman, walked into the building with a 9mm gun in his hand and calmly began to kill. Xerox employee Andy DeLeon was nearby when he said he heard some banging noises, and then he heard his supervisor say, "Run."
Oh, start thinking about your life and everything.
The suspect, a 40-year-old man, quickly left the premises in a company van. Later in the morning, the police had it surrounded. After a standoff that lasted for several hours, the suspect was taken into custody. By that time, authorities learned the man had several firearms registered in his name, but they had no immediate explanation as to why anyone would kill the 7 Xerox workers. Honolulu's mayor had no answers either.
We have such a safe community with almost no violent crime. To have someone snap like this and murder 7 people is just absolutely appalling.
The mayor went on to suggest that what's most appalling about all this is that it happened in what he calls paradise, not so many miles away from Waikiki, one of the most famous tourist beaches in the world. Ann McDermott, CNN.
The political scene now. This is Election Day 1999, remember or not, and the results will be assessed with next year's presidential contest in mind. In Kentucky, incumbent Democrat Paul Patton has easily won re-election as governor there. And in Mississippi, the gubernatorial race between former Republican Congressman Mike Parker and Democratic Lieutenant Governor Ron Musgrove is now too close to call. The contest is to succeed Kirk Fordyce, Mississippi's first GOP governor this century. For more coverage of Campaign 2000, log on to CNN's political website, allpolitics.com.
Still ahead, money, marketing, and modern art. Why everyone's watching this man. And what role does Lauren Hutton play in all this?
These are so beautiful.
When CNN Newsstand returns.
This is where it all came from. This is where it all came from. The corporate ladder, the bottom line. This is the language that they invented. They want you to think it's about challenge. You know it's about power. You know it's about winning. And these days, it's not who you know. It's what you know.
Rico is in your corner with the digital solutions that make your workplace work.
As you might expect, Keller and I don't see eye to eye on investing. I like to avoid risk. Keller's a little more daring. We do, however, share the same new way to trade online.
Introducing Power Street by Fidelity, the first site with trading tools customized by Lycos to fit your life, your goals, your unique way of doing things.
Look, the market's up. Or, in your case, down.
Power Street Online Trading. Call or visit Fidelity.com to open an account.
That's 5 years, and we finally get City Boy away from the stock market.
I'm getting firewood.
You've been doing that all day. Hey, did you hear about my stocks? Man, can I pick the winners?
Yeah, down 20 points.
But if stocks were like football, I'd put all my money on New York.
What?
New York? Man, I bet you $50 they win tonight.
No way, it's not gonna happen.
Now you can stay connected with internet-ready wireless phones, one of the many new technologies available at Best Buy.
I'd take that bet.
They're not gonna make it 100. You got it. $100. Did you hear that?
You keep me walking. 1931. New adventures, new experiences.
and a revolutionary wristwatch catches the spirit of the Art Deco age. The Reverso. Turn it over to reveal the other side of time. The Reverso by Jaeger-LeCoultre, avant-garde since 1931.
New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani is ordering city attorneys to appeal yesterday's federal court order restoring city funding to the Brooklyn Museum of Art. You remember this one? Giuliani cut off the money last month, outraged over an exhibit which includes a painting of the Virgin Mary decorated with elephant dung. The exhibition is attracting record crowds.
Heated as that dispute is, it's minor compared to how the art establishment is reacting to another museum director known for his buccaneering ways. Thomas Krenz of the Guggenheim Museum has infuriated the highbrow elite not only with what he selects to put on exhibit, but also with the changes he has brought to the way art institutions operate. And now his most incendiary project yet will change the New York City waterfront.
Here's the cool thing is that we do this, the tent, but the 15 by 15 is kind of small.
The taller man is Tom Krenz, with Italian painter Francesco Clemente, whose works are on exhibit at the Guggenheim right now. This, though, is months ago in Clemente's New York City studio, as Krenz selected paintings with show curator Lisa Dennison.
The flower one, we're talking about.
Yes, the flower one.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
We always talk about
I want that. That's in.
Wow, these are so beautiful.
One admirer, supermodel and actress Lauren Hutton.
So how many
What
months
she
are
got to do with the Guggenheim? A lot, it turns out. Tell you at lunch, after she studied all of Clemente's erotically posed figures.
And there he is, trying to capture it all.
Now that they're on exhibit, Clemente's works are attracting huge crowds. But no painting has ever brought as many museum goers to the Guggenheim's famous Spiral Gallery as a show of motorcycles 1 year ago.
It's 140 motorcycles on the sacred Frank Lloyd Wright ramp of the Guggenheim Museum, and the entire museum clad in stainless steel by Frank Gehry on the inside. That's not subtle. I mean, you know.
The longer lines stretched, usually around the block, the more shocked and appalled critics got. Some said Krenz was pandering to lowbrow tastes.
And so what's the criticism? You profaned the space?
I don't think there's any criticism anymore.
Yes, there is.
The trouble with the Guggenheim is this emphasis on achieving and maintaining a high profile over the kinds of things that museums are really supposed to be focusing on.
Eric Gibson, who reports on art and culture for the Wall Street Journal, says Krenz is dumbing down art. Gibson believes the Guggenheim should be putting on more innovative shows and sponsoring scholarly research. Krenz said this show on Chinese antiquities met those standards, but so did the motorcycles.
Let's take a fresh look at this object. Let's look at it as a vehicle for design, as a vehicle for technological innovation. I mean, this is what museums should do. It's interesting stuff. It should be slightly surprising.
Krenz has been surprising the museum world since the Guggenheim board hired him in 1988. He talked like a corporate executive, odd for a college art professor, but his postgraduate study at Yale was for a sort of business degree for directors of nonprofit organizations. And as he used management training to analyze the Guggenheim's future, it was bleak. Shrinking attendance, shrinking endowment, shrinking government and corporate support.
Putting it in classical economic terms, it was becoming a mature industry, and we didn't have a great position in it.
The remedies Krenz undertook offended critics much more than motorcycles ever would. They say he used the museum's art collection as collateral for a $55 million bond issue, cash needed to repair the building, a Frank Lloyd Wright masterpiece which was falling apart.
The value of the bond issue was greater than the value of their endowment, so there was a gap there.
So he was betting the company on this.
Well, effectively, yes.
Would creditors cart off paintings to settle debts? The Guggenheim said never. But then to raise more cash, Krenz sold 3 famous paintings at auction, a Kandinsky, a Chagall, and a Modigliani. Eric Gibson and others said that just isn't done.
A museum collection is like an encyclopedia. You know, you want to keep all the volumes together. It's not, I have 27 books, let me get rid of a few here, because then you find out you've gotten rid of the K volume.
But the fact that there were 3 names, and we did it publicly, and we did get a huge prize.
$47 million?
Yeah, it was $47 million. I think the estimate range was 18 to 21. We did it at a perfect time, at the height of the art market, and by doing it as publicly, we were excoriated in the press.
$1 million to produce the piece. The equipment needs are $200,000.
Included in the million?
Then there was this, Krenz enjoying the art of the deal, maybe more than the art.
And so, as you're saying, is that the difference is $500,000.
$500,000.
So let's just make the case. It's a negotiation. It'll take 2 months to work out.
I have the same experience all the time in the business.
Insurance executive Peter Lewis, billionaire chairman of the Guggenheim's board of billionaire trustees, most new since Krenz, by the way, says any museum today must employ business and marketing strategies, competing as it does with theme parks and movies and all other forms of popular entertainment.
It's become a place where people go to escape from the rigors of business. But the museums have costs and they have revenues. And when those don't match, the museum's got problems.
And even Krenz's critics say he put the Guggenheim, which is tiny compared to its rivals in New York and other cities, on the map.
He's given the Guggenheim a level of visibility that every other museum director, I think, must envy.
I mean, I look at it that there are 900,000 visitors that come to this museum every year, and that means 900,000 different experiences.
Giving that experience to more people was the next step, as Krenz explained while walking past Picasso's gathered for another exhibit. But that wouldn't be easy. The Guggenheim only has room to show 5% of its paintings at any one time.
To me, the fundamental issue was space, that there wasn't enough space, simply, to do the job well.
This is an etching that was done.
The solution? He started sending the Guggenheim's artworks to museums around the world. More people saw them, and income soared because the other museums paid fees to the Guggenheim.
But they're very, very rich in interpretation.
Next, satellites, new Guggenheim galleries, this one in Manhattan's Soho district. Then, international satellites. There was already one small gallery in Venice. Krenz created new Guggenheims in Berlin. And in Bilbao, Spain, where the titanium-clad curves of this Frank Gehry design made this building more than a place for art. It is an economic locomotive, pulling people and money to a region that was dying. 1.6 million visitors in its first year, $219 million. There's Krenz during construction, when even some friends were calling this practice Mac Guggenheim, franchising the museum like a hamburger chain.
What he's done really has been to create a new kind of museum. It's the art museum as multinational corporation.
And it would not have happened but for Tom's willingness to say, what's been done before is not relevant. I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
But Eric Gibson sees a downside.
If you conceive the museum as an engine of economic growth, you're going to think, well, can we do this show, which might be of slightly marginal interest to the public, but is extremely worthwhile from the point of view of research and art history, or shall we just put the motorcycle show in here and be confident that they'll line up around the block to see it?
Is this a 1-hour program on the biographies of these 6 women, you know, as told by Lauren Hutton? Or
at lunch, another project to make art accessible. Videotaped programs hosted by Lauren Hutton. The first about 6 Soviet modernists they'll call Amazons of the avant-garde.
Look at what this woman did in 2 years. She went from theirs, early Cubism, to that in 2 years.
After dessert, Hutton praised what she called Krenz's bravery and innovation. I got the feeling from some of his critics that people were saying he's letting the barbarians inside the gate.
I said
Okay, thank you very much.
Now an idea sure to create more fireworks than any to date. A new Guggenheim on the New York City waterfront. Much larger than Bilbao, another Frank Gehry design so radical it makes Bilbao look like a shoebox.
Here's some napkins.
Friends, let the cat out of the bag in a meeting with artist Henry Buell.
I mean, I would say there may be 10 sites that this could be on, from the Midtown West Side all the way around to the Brooklyn Bridge. Probably of those sites, 7 are on the waterfront and 3 are inland. Hey, what's going to be here is there's going to
Should
be
this idea become reality, costing $850 million at current estimates, Krenz will have to face down more than art world traditionalists. All the parties with an interest in what gets built in New York City will need tending. Still, it could cap his decade-long effort to redefine what museums are.
I mean, I want to make the argument for putting this in the middle.
And what a museum director does.
The shape of what these institutions look like and their role in society was essentially up for redefinition. And I saw it as an extraordinary opportunity.
An opportunity too big to miss, perhaps. The American Association of Museums said today, 1998 attendance at museums was 865 million. That's more than all the people who attended sporting events, both amateur and professional, plus movies, plus fine arts performances.
Bring on the motorcycles. Well, here's another sign of the times, a record high on Wall Street.
Susan Lisovich is in New York now to preview our Moneyline update. Susan.
Hello, Stephen and Natalie. The NASDAQ smashed through a landmark, but it didn't stick around very long. Full market coverage next on the Moneyline update.
Moneyline Update is brought to you by Williams, Energy, Communications, Leadership.
To giving you enough bandwidth.
Enough bandwidth? That's like saying enough cash flow. We gotta call Williams Communications. There'd be no limit to our cash flow because there's no limit to their bandwidth. I mean, you know who has fiber envy over Williams Network? Williams actually grows bandwidth, I think. They must have these huge bandwidth farms that just sprawl on across the American Midwest. Can you see the waving fields of bandwidth just waving in the wind? It bends, but it doesn't break.
A mixed day in the markets today. An early run-up disintegrated as profit-taking took over. The Dow Industrials reversed course and ended up losing 66 points, closing at 10,581. A different story at the NASDAQ, which enjoyed another record-setting day, at one point breaking through the 3,000-point barrier. It finished up nearly 14 points at 2981. The bond market gained ground. The 30-year Treasury closed up 17/32. The yield down 6.13%. Americans know how to spend, but their ability to save is coming into question. U.S. personal income held steady in September, but spending continued to rise at a fast pace, and that sent the personal savings rate to a record low.
I think it does show consumers are in a buying mood. The income being on the soft side is, again, due to Hurricane Floyd, similar to what we've seen in a couple other reports. If you take out that temporary impact, you still see some decent income growth. And I think that combination of modest spending and income growth is going to help the economy grow into the future.
The Clinton administration is trying to encourage more Americans to look at government-backed bonds as a place to save. A new website called the Savings Bond Connection will let people buy treasuries over the net 24 hours a day. Cyberspace, just the latest step by the government to make savings bonds a more attractive investment. About 55 million Americans already own savings bonds. Higher borrowing costs led to disappointing October sales for automakers. General Motor sales fell more than 3%. GM reported strong demand for its truck-making department, but a depleted supply of some models hurt car sales. As for Ford, car sales were up, but it wasn't enough to offset a drop in trucks. Daimler Chrysler also had a weak month. Sales there down 4%. And speaking of Daimler Chrysler, it looks like Plymouth may soon be hitting the road. Sources say the company is phasing out its Plymouth brand. Plymouth has manufactured some pretty memorable cars throughout the years.
Plymouth Fury, finest
fins you ever saw in a small car. They were big, and they were long. You see a Plymouth today, a Plymouth Fury, a 59 Plymouth Fury, you're going to say, how did anyone park that?
Company officials are meeting in Las Vegas with dealer representatives to make a final decision on the matter. And that's it for the Moneyline update. Now back to Stephen and Natalie in Atlanta.
Hey, Susan, we had one of those when I was growing up, and they were great. Big fins.
Well, earlier when we were discussing the subject of this week's Technophile, one of our staffers leaned over to a friend and whispered, "This gadget isn't a guy, it listens."
Actually, it has no gender at all. It's the latest software to make your computer listen to your voice. Here's CNN's Rick Lockridge.
Wouldn't it be great if you could just, ellipsis, talk to your computer, question mark? You could keep your fingers free for more important pursuits. Well, we're not quite there yet, but recent improvements in voice recognition technology hint at a future that'll allow the children of the new millennium to take a hands-off approach to computing.
Please transfer any miles.
Sure enough, the three major software programs out there can type as fast as you can talk.
Dear sir or madam, colon.
Even you New Yorkers. And they all claim to be more than 95% accurate. L&H Voice Express, Dragon Naturally Speaking, and IBM Via Voice all work pretty much alike, though some of the commands are different. You spend about an hour teaching the software your voice. Then you can start talking. Early on, you'll find yourself stopping a lot to make corrections. But over time, performance improves, and all three programs are smart enough to learn from their mistakes. You can teach them all the special jargon of your profession, for example, medicine or law. You can spend under $50 for a basic package, or nearly $200 for a pro version. You'll need a fast PC, Pentium 2 or above, with a good sound card and at least 64 megs of RAM to get really good results. Microphone headsets come with the software. 1,000 years from now, anthropologists will unearth a QWERTY keyboard somewhere, and they'll wonder what primitives we must have been to talk with our fingers. They might also have a question or two about our cholesterol levels. That's Technophile.
Technophile is brought to you by Dell, direct computer solution from the company that pioneered direct around the world. Be direct, Dell.
I like to think of myself as an innovator who started a company, Dell Computer, around an idea that everybody should be doing business directly with one another, one-to-one, with no barriers. To me, that's the power of the internet. We'd like to show you how to empower your business in ways you'd never imagined. I'm Michael Dell, and it's our reason for being.
Be direct. Dell. Dell servers use Intel Pentium 3 processors.
If you were a new luxury car, how would you stand apart from the rest? Would you have the most powerful V6 in your class? Or the largest interior? Maybe you'd offer amenities you couldn't find anywhere else. Imagine how special you'd be if you could claim all of them. Presenting the all-new Infiniti i30. It's all the best thinking.
Until now, there has been a wall between you and the tools of serious trading. That wall is coming down. The information and technology professionals use to trade is now available to everyone. Daytech Online. The rules are changing.
Of all the stories you've come to know, the most important by far is your own. With no other story, you care so much about how it turns out. Are you just waiting to see, or are you writing it the way you want it to go? At Jefferson Pilot Financial, we're doing more than providing financial services. We're helping you write the story of your life.
Now there's one more reason to love the nightlife. Sprint Nickel Nights now includes calling card calls, 5 cents a minute at home and on the road. Move to Sprint Nickel Nights. Call 1-800-PIN-DROP.
There's no formula to loving your dog, but there is to feeding him.
Hill's Science Diet. It's what more vets like Dr. Tom Horn feed their own pets.
With real meat as the #1 ingredient, Savory Recipes provides the highest quality protein.
Protein is essential to help ensure these guys have a long, healthy life. So nourish your dog's spirit. Let Science Diet nourish the rest.
Superior nutrition for the life of your pet. Science Diet. What vets feed their pets.
One small step for man.
The high roads of the future.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
One of the things I hope for is the return of spirituality in all of our lives, wherever we place our faith.
Human beings are meaning-seeking animals. And that means we will constantly look beyond us to a world of depth, which is the world of the spirit.
The thing that concerns me about the millennium, and the thing I would like to see happen, and I think that if we all acknowledge that first and foremost we're spiritual beings inside these physical bodies, that we can step back and start to acknowledge that we've got to slow down and simplify.
Life is about reaching some sort of positive spiritual destiny and making the world better. And when we start to focus on that, and enough people focus on that, then there'll be a real urge to live it.
We all come here to fulfill our purpose. We take manifestation in the physical world. We are spiritual beings that are having a human experience, not human beings who have a spiritual experience.
This Voices of the Millennium is presented by Lincoln, American Luxury.
The new Lincoln LS.
Well, tomorrow on Newsstand, the man who's created some of the decade's most popular bands by taking a page from Smokey Robinson and the folks of Motown.
Bill Smokey.
What did he tell you?
He gave me all a little background about Motown, how it worked, and how they were cultivating their artists and keeping it as one big family. And family spirit is what we try to keep.
How Lou Pearlman became the king of pop. Lou who? We'll show you tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern.
Gotta tune in.
I'm Stephen Frazier.
And I'm Natalie Allen. For all of us, good night from the Newsstand.
Millennium, Sundays at 10 Eastern on CNN.